Story 1. The Shadow in the Hallway. Emily had been searching for a place to live for months when she stumbled upon the ad for a cozy, affordable one-bedroom apartment. It was nestled in an older building at the edge of town, where the streets were quieter and the rent was surprisingly reasonable. It seemed perfect, almost too perfect. The first week passed without incident. Emily spent her evenings unpacking boxes, setting up her furniture, and admiring the charm of her new home. The creaky wooden floors and antique doorknobs added character, she thought. But as the second week rolled around, she began noticing small, inexplicable things. She'd leave her keys on the kitchen counter and find them hours later on the coffee table. Doors she was certain she'd closed would be slightly ajar. At first, she blamed her forgetfulness, laughing it off as moving stress. But then came the nights. Around midnight, she started hearing faint creaks, like footsteps, moving up and down the hallway outside her bedroom. Assuming it was her upstairs neighbors, Emily ignored it. But one night, the sounds grew louder, heavier, and unmistakably inside her apartment. Her heart raced, but she convinced herself it was nothing. Maybe the old building just made noises. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone. The first encounter. One night, Emily was watching TV in the living room when she felt a strange sensation, like she was being watched. She turned her head toward the hallway and saw a fleeting shadow dart across the wall. It was so quick she doubted herself. Was it a trick of the light? She turned off the TV and sat in silence, straining to hear anything unusual. The faint sound of breathing, deep, slow, and deliberate, reached her ears. It wasn't coming from outside or the vents. It was inside the hallway. Emily froze. She told herself to get up, to check, to prove it was nothing. But her body refused to move. Finally, she mustered the courage to grab her phone and turn on its flashlight. Slowly, she made her way toward the hallway. It was empty, but just as she sighed in relief, a cold breeze brushed past her, sending chills down her spine. The shadow appears. 2 nights later, Emily woke up at exactly 3:13 a.m. The room was silent except for the faint ticking of her bedside clock. But something felt wrong. She glanced at the bedroom door, which was slightly open, allowing a sliver of light from the hallway to spill in. And there it was. A tall, dark figure stood at the end of the hallway. Its body was impossibly black, darker than the shadows around it. It didn't have a face, but Emily could feel its gaze piercing her. It didn't move, just stood there, motionless, as though it were waiting. Emily wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Her body felt like it was trapped in a nightmare, unable to move. Then, slowly, the shadow raised an arm and pointed directly at her. That's when she broke. She grabbed her phone, bolted out of bed, and ran out the front door without even looking back. She didn't stop running until she was outside, barefoot and trembling on the sidewalk. The landlord's revelation. The next day, Emily called her best friend and asked them to come with her to the apartment to pack her belongings. She was too terrified to go alone. Together, they quickly grabbed her essentials and loaded them into her car. Before leaving, Emily decided to confront the landlord about what had happened. When she told him about the shadow, his face went pale. After some hesitation, he admitted something he hadn't disclosed before. The previous tenant, a young woman around Emily's age, had disappeared 6 months earlier. She left behind all her belongings, and the police found no sign of foul play. The case went cold. Emily demanded to know more, but the landlord said little else. She left that day, vowing never to return. Aftermath. For weeks, Emily had nightmares of the shadowy figure. She never rented an old apartment again, and to this day, she refuses to leave her bedroom door open at night. Some nights, she swears she still feels its cold presence, watching her. Story 2. The phone call. It was Kate's first semester in college, and she was thrilled to be living on campus. Her dorm room was small but cozy, and she had quickly decorated it with fairy lights and pictures of family and friends to make it feel like home. The nights were often quiet, with most students spending time at the library or in the lounge, but Kate didn't mind. She valued her alone time until the call started. It was a Wednesday night when she received the first call. Her phone buzzed on the desk, and she glanced at the screen. Unknown number. Curious, she picked up, "Hello?" There was no response, just silence, followed by faint, heavy breathing. A chill ran down her spine. "Who is this?" she asked, but the caller hung up. Kate brushed it off as a prank. College was full of immature people, and she figured someone had dialed the wrong number. But over the next few days, the calls continued. At first, the calls were sporadic. The unknown number would call late at night, but no one would speak. Just the same heavy breathing on the other end. Kate tried blocking the number, but somehow the calls kept coming. One night, around 2 a.m., her phone rang again. This time, the voice on the other end whispered, "Kate." Her heart stopped. How did they know her name? "Who is this? What do you want?" she yelled, but the line went dead. That was the first time she truly felt scared. She told her roommate, Jenna, about the calls. Jenna suggested it was someone from their class trying to mess with her and offered to stay up with her in case the caller tried again. But the next night, when the phone rang, Jenna was out studying late. Kate hesitated before picking up. This time, the voice whispered, "I see you." Kate's blood ran cold. She looked around the room, locking the door and closing the blinds. "Leave me alone," she screamed into the phone, her voice shaking. By now, Kate was paranoid. She told campus security about the calls, but there wasn't much they could do. The number couldn't be traced, and there was no evidence of foul play. They assured her the campus was safe, but she wasn't so sure. The calls continued every night. The voice became more menacing, whispering things like, "You can't hide from me," and "I'm coming for you." Kate started having trouble sleeping, and her grades began to slip. One Friday night, she decided to stay in and catch up on her studies. Around midnight, her phone buzzed. Her stomach dropped when she saw unknown number on the screen. She ignored the call, but it rang again and again. Finally, she picked up, her hands trembling. "I'm right outside," the voice said. Kate froze. Her dorm room was on the ground floor, and she realized the window blinds were slightly open. Summoning her courage, she peeked through the blinds and screamed. A man was standing outside, staring directly at her window. He wore a hoodie that obscured most of his face, but his eyes were fixed on her. She could see the glint of something shiny in his hand, a knife. She quickly grabbed her phone and dialed campus security. The man didn't move, just kept staring as she frantically locked her window and backed away. When security arrived, the man was gone. They found muddy footprints leading up to her window and a few cigarette butts nearby, suggesting he'd been there for hours. Kate moved to a different dorm the next day, but the trauma stayed with her. The police never identified the man, and the calls stopped after she moved. But every now and then, when she's alone at night, her phone buzzes unexpectedly, and she can't help but feel a wave of dread. Story 3. The Stranger in the Basement. Tom and Sarah had been married for 3 years when they found the perfect house to rent, a charming, old farmhouse on the outskirts of town. It had a large backyard, cozy bedrooms, and even a small basement for storage. Despite its age, the house seemed like a dream come true, and the couple eagerly moved in. At first, everything was wonderful. They spent their days unpacking and decorating, and their nights were filled with laughter and dreams of starting a family. But within a week, strange things began to happen. It started with noises, soft creaks, and faint thuds coming from the basement. Tom brushed it off as the house settling or the wind rattling the old foundation. Sarah wasn't so sure, but she didn't press the issue. One night, as they were watching TV, they heard it again. This time it was louder, a distinct rhythmic sound like footsteps. "Did you hear that?" Sarah asked, clutching Tom's arm. "Yeah, probably just the pipes," Tom replied, though he didn't sound convinced. They decided to investigate. Tom grabbed a flashlight, and Sarah followed closely behind as they descended the creaky wooden stairs into the basement. The air was damp and musty, and a single bare light bulb flickered overhead. They searched every corner, but the space was empty, except for a few boxes and an old workbench left by the previous tenants. Relieved, they went back upstairs, thinking it was their imagination. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. A few days later, Sarah was doing laundry in the basement when she noticed something strange. One of the walls sounded hollow when she knocked on it. Intrigued, she called Tom down, and together, they examined the area. That's when Tom found it, a small, hidden door partially concealed behind the old workbench. It was locked, but with some effort, Tom managed to force it open. What they found inside made their blood run cold. The hidden room was no larger than a walk-in closet. Inside was a filthy mattress, a pile of old, crumpled clothes, and dozens of empty food wrappers. But the most disturbing thing was the notebook lying on the mattress. Tom picked it up and flipped through the pages. It was filled with detailed notes about their daily lives. What time they left for work, when they went to bed, what they ate for dinner. Someone had been watching them. Panicked, they called the police, who arrived within minutes. The officers searched the house and surrounding property, but found no one. However, the evidence in the hidden room suggested that someone had been living there recently, possibly even while Tom and Sarah were home. That night, Tom and Sarah couldn't sleep. Every sound made them jump, and they kept imagining the stranger lurking in the shadows. Around 3 a.m., they heard the front door creak. Tom grabbed a baseball bat and crept downstairs, his heart pounding. The door was slightly ajar. Outside, they found fresh footprints in the dirt, leading away from the house. The police never caught the person who had been living in their basement. The landlord claimed to have no knowledge of the hidden room, but Tom and Sarah weren't convinced. They moved out within a week, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. To this day, they wonder who the stranger was and how long he had been living there before they discovered him. Thank you for joining me in the shadows tonight. If these stories gave you chills, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. And remember, reality can often be scarier than fiction. Subscribe and hit the bell icon to never miss a new tale of terror. Until next time, stay safe and stay out of the dark.